Dear Mary, finally, we have talked about doing this podcast forever, and now we're here. Finally, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, where should we even start? Because we have been talking about actually for days. What should we talk about? Because there are so many topics we could dive into. So, I'm thinking before we start, tell me a little bit about your background.
So when people say, "What do you do for a living?" It's actually really complicated. So I started out as going to college and becoming a registered nurse, and then I right away started for a master's degree from Penn in nursing administration. So I was working as a nurse, going to Penn as part of the hospital deal, making some great lifelong friends, and had my master's in nursing administration and became a head nurse around the age of 25. So I had, a lot of responsibility and in the nursing profession, I began to publish some papers. And even though back then I didn't know what applied behavior analysis was, there was no such thing as a board certified behavior analyst or anything like that. I always viewed everything since I've been a child in terms of like, this system doesn't make sense. There could be a better way. And so I just naturally started changing behavior and went from University of Penn Hospital to McGee Rehab. Always worked in the neuro rehab field. So working with neurologically impaired patients like stroke patients, brain tumors, head injuries, spinal cord injuries, where things can really change very drastically. We are in Miami and might be a little noisy out here, but we were walking and it was so windy today. And it reminded me of like a patient who was walking to his girlfriend's graduation from Penn. And they, both very nice black, man and woman. And the woman was graduating and it was a hugely winter day. And one of the street lamps in Philadelphia fell on this guy's head and he was brain injured and really impaired for life. And like those kinds of things, you know, spinal cord injured patients who were on their honeymoon and dove into, shallow water and were paralyzed from the neck down. So I was always a cautious kid. And then with that background, so fast forward, I married my husband, who was an emergency medicine physician. We were both at Jefferson. And he had to go somewhere when he was done his 3-year residency. So we ended up moving to my hometown and having 2 boys back to back, Lucas and Spencer. They're 18 months apart. And I was always thinking that when after I raised my kids a little bit, that I would go back and get a PhD in nursing and continue my work because I really kind of shifted the shift to shift report, like 7 to 3 shift, giving report to 3 to 11. And it was a bad game of pest down the alley. So I had reinvented how shift to shift report was going to go and published a paper and redesigned that at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital where I was working. So I thought really I would go back into that work and
do a PhD on shift reporting.
in nursing. And then really, that was kind of what I was really
Right.
into. But my older son, Lucas, was diagnosed with autism, moderate to severe autism, the day before he turned 3, after more than a year or 2 years in denial. And this was back in 1999, before there was social media, when the autism rate was thought to be 1 in 500. And, Lucas didn't really look bad. I mean, at 2, he went to typical preschool. He did have some words. And so everybody just thought it was going to get better, kind of thing.
Just give it some time.
Yeah. So he was diagnosed the day before he was 3. I went into full mode of trying to help him. learned about applied behavior analysis through a book, and I had to become an advocate. And
So that definitely changed your life, your family's life, your career,
right.
and what you decided to do going forward. Because that's how I know you, and we got to know each other back in 2017, where I learned that you are one of the leading experts on autism in the world.
Right. And that was by chance because I was already a master's prepared nurse, already a nurse manager, and worked in neuro rehab, where we had to reteach patients how to talk or how to walk or work with multidisciplinary teams.
But did that was that apparent to you from the start that all the body of knowledge that you already had could apply to Lucas's
No.
challenges?
No, but they say that it takes like 10,000 hours to develop expertise. Yet I borrowed all of that expertise in managing people, hiring, firing, training, um, neurologic patients to get from point A to point B, whatever that is. I also had the ability to take complex information and pare it down to patients' families. So, they might come in and say, oh, he has a glioblastoma, blah, 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 and use all complicated terms. And then I was left to help the parents or the patients, families, and the patients kind of, you know, deal with it and say, okay, how can we take this from point A to point B, whatever that looks like. So, really, a lot of my background was highly transferable. In fact, I found out that becoming a board certified behavior analyst only started really in about the year 2000. Lucas was diagnosed in 99. I was one of the first 1,200 behavior analysts in the whole world. And now there's, tens of thousands of behavior analysts. And I also, because I was familiar with presenting and researching and publishing, hit the ground running in that
Right.
aspect as well.
So that's what you ended up doing your PhD in.
Uh, well, I ended up having the opportunity to apply for a PhD in leadership because then once I, got to where I wanted to pursue a doctorate, pursuing a doctorate in nursing didn't make sense because I would be kind of pigeonholed into diagnosis and that, which I was interested in. It was also far from where I lived down to Penn. And, online programs didn't really make sense. And then my, somewhere really close started a PhD in leadership, which made a lot of sense because I could do my dissertation in what I wanted. And, in a lot of ways, I was a leader and still am a leader. I founded the Autism Society in my county. I founded a nursing honor society. So I was kind of all in the forefront.
Just to like have a little to get the numbers right, right? You said back in the days when Lucas was born, 1996, it was said that probably 1 in 500 kids could develop autism. What's that number today, like 30 years later,
Right. So
in the US?
in the US, 8-year-old children have a 1 in 31 chance of having autism.
1 in 31,
And that it's more for boys. I think it's 1 in 22 boys. So,
meaning at least one per class.
yeah, yeah. And if we take all of the developmental disorders, not just autism, ADHD, learning disabilities, in 8-year-old children, it's about 1 in 6.
1 in 6.
Yeah. So everywhere I go, if I say, well, I work in the autism world and then somebody knows somebody
Of
that
course.
either has autism, had signs of autism maybe when they were little, and or has a family member that works in the field or, yeah,
Just like in these few days that we've been here, like we've met so many people who
right.
like have good use of the knowledge that you're sharing. So that's also, we haven't really talked about this, but my background, my personal struggle with being obese and struggling with being overweight for like 3 decades turned into be my biggest resource in a way, because that's what I've been helping
Right.
Norwegians with, right, for the last decade in losing all their excess weight. And I'm just thinking, like, not that anyone deserves to take on this toll, but have you ever considered, like, you and your experiences with you having Lucas has made you into the phenomenal teacher you are in the field today?
Yeah. I mean, it was luck that, all of these things were in place, that I was in neuro, that I I spent a year in staff development training and developing trainings for new nurses, and continuing education. So I knew how to do continuing education credits and worked with multidisciplinary teams of occupational therapists and speech therapists. And, you know, um, so there was just a lot of my background that I was kind of already primed to hit the ground running.
So, very long story, extremely short. You've written two best-selling, like multi-country best-selling, international bestsellers. You have touring the world as a renowned autism expert. You have, that's for how we met. You have online courses. We met through our mentor, Jeff Walker, like in 2017, like we touched upon. Do you have any idea on how many families or children or parents you've helped? Is that even a number
Um,
that's possible to find out?
well, if we go by, social media presence, video views, I think on on YouTube, for instance, I have over 200,000 subscribers and 100 more than 100,000 on Facebook and 100,000 on TikTok and 50,000 on Instagram. Like those sorts of numbers. And then on YouTube alone, we have, I think, maybe 15 million views, video
Right.
views. Now,
And you have a
you know,
you have a podcast,
I have a
turn
podcast, Turn
autism
Autism
around.
Around. That's another 2 million downloads, audio downloads, but we also put it on YouTube. So, I mean, I've reached millions. I have people who have taken my courses from over 100 countries,
Wow.
parents and professionals over the 11 years since I've been selling online. So, um, you know, and helping is, a broad term. But yeah, I mean, my work has been out there and because I dove all in, so when I was a nurse, that and I still maintain my nursing license. So, as a nurse, and then I pivoted to a nurse manager, then I pivoted to a board certified behavior analyst. I worked in schools, then I founded the Autism Society, so I'm an author. I mean, an advocate, and then my first book, and then international keynote speaker, like all of these. But because I was doing all the traditional things, trying to get the word out, because I really do have a very unique system for not just kids with autism, but toddlers showing signs. And really, the best, safest, least expensive way to, but the title of my podcast and my newest book is Turn Autism Around. The best chance of turning autism around is at the first signs or before the first
Right.
signs. And the early signs of ADHD or a learning disability or autism or even COVID isolation and too much screen time can all look very similar in an 18-month or 2-year-old. And I am on a mission to empower parents to learn about anything that gets
Right.
off track and to teach them and empower them to turn things around in all areas,
Right.
not just talking, reduce tantrums, improve picky eating, potty training, sleeping, and all the things that even typical parents of typical kids struggle with
Right.
constantly.
So the keyword being early intervention, because it has to do with neuroplasticity, right? An 18 months old can be like a sponge sucking so much more information into her little brain than an adult, for example, right?
Yeah. And when you say early intervention in the United States, people think, oh, get early intervention in place, which is not a bad idea. However, you can't stop there.
You have to educate yourself as a parent.
Yeah, because the early intervention system that is currently in place in the United States, it is very common for kids who will eventually get diagnosed with autism to get 1 hour of speech, 1 hour of OT, 1 hour of teacher time. It's just the same prescription that kids back in the 90s were given.
Right.
And studies have shown that kids really need intensive intervention
Right.
to best turn things around. And in my opinion, the best outcomes are when at least one parent becomes the captain of the ship and learns how to become their child's best teacher and advocate for life. So, should you wait in line for an evaluation and a diagnosis? Should um, you have speech therapy in place? Should you have home speech therapy or private speech therapy or group speech therapy? Should you put your child in a typical preschool? What should you do about biting or hitting or putting things in your mouth or swallowing and ingesting things? It's called pica. I mean, there's so many things that if we empower at least one parent to fully understand and go all in, you have the best chances of a great outcome.
So I also wanted to touch upon that's your expertise. But I just wanted to point out the thing. We coming from totally different backgrounds, being lucky enough to be a part of the same community with a great mentor and teacher, then we kept in touch. We briefly met and then we met again and then we got to hang out on a mastermind together. This was back in 2019. And the two of us and another friend of ours, our dear Tembi, the three of us have been meeting consistently for more than 6 years now. Online, like meeting
Every other week.
every other week
Mhm.
week on Zoom. I just want to point that out, the power of community, not hanging around people who are exactly the same as you, but like we share some common, we have, I would say, share common goals. Like if you win, we all win, right?
Mhm.
I often say this. And also the knowledge that you have acquired in your field of expertise has great relevance to what I'm trying to accomplish with what I'm doing, right? So in planning this podcast, we also talked about you have developed some amazing systems, which of course is very valuable for your autism parents, but also has great relevance for everyone else who wants to, let's say, track change or build new habits or just trying to figure out what's working and what's not working.
Right.
Should we,
Yeah.
can we call this the Mary Barbera calendar system or what's it called?
It's my calendar method. And it really does have relevance for everyone I know. And I'm going to explain it. I actually brought a calendar with me so I can show you. But um, it it does have broad implications for everybody. And a lot of my nursing background and advocacy background and parent of a son with autism goes into here. We have some mutual friends, two that I can think of off the top of my head, that both had cardiac problems a few years back. And I told both of them about the calendar system. But like if you have any kind of chronic condition or your child has any kind of chronic condition, which is almost everybody, right? Or if you want to change something, whether you want to change your weight, or you want to change and learn a foreign language, if you want to get stronger and weight train, there are, or you want to sleep better. So, applied behavior analysis. So, I'm a board certified behavior analyst now. And so, I have studied and apply the applied behavior analysis. And that is a field of psychology. And it is changing the science of changing socially significant or important behavior. That's all it is. It's the science of changing behavior, which you're in the science of changing weight and, health and energy. And my friends with cardiac issues are in the situation where they want to change their cardiac health. My friends with cancer want to change their their health. Um, so over the years, my son Lucas, who has moderate to severe autism, pretty profound, needs 24/7 supervision. Um, we've tried over the years multiple standard medications, some alternatives, supplements, some lots of behavior change procedures. And when he was little, before I had the calendar system, I might say, okay, we've tried, 8 medications in the past, when I before I developed this. I can't tell you the names of the medication, what he weighed, what dosage he was on, why we started it, what symptom were we trying to treat, and why we stopped it. I
Right.
have no idea.
You remember that you did something, but you can't
We
remember the
tried
detail.
it.
You tried something, but you
Right.
can't really remember what it was.
So it's like a bad game of what I call whack-a-mole, where you're trying to one thing, you may be trying it right, or you may be trying it for 3 days, or you may be trying it for 1 day, or you may be kind of straddling diets and those sort of thing where you're trying things, but it's not really right. So the calendar system, this is for Lucas, and this is a calendar from one of the years, and you'll see like pencil and red pen. That's all you
So,
basically need to
so
sit.
for those who just listening, I can just explain that
Yeah,
on the 2-page spread, there's 1 month. You can see the whole month on 2 pages in front of you.
right. So this is a physical monthly calendar. And in writing, we have things in pencil, which is basically his caregiver's schedule or things that we want to write down. But the really important thing is the stuff in red pen,
Okay.
which the red pen are any medical changes. Now, for some of my clients in the past, we've tracked their sleep, or we've tracked for Lucas, we would have tracked in the past. He has very few major problem behaviors, but he still has a little bit of self-injurious behavior. A lot of times those happen at night when there's really nothing cause it. It's not like I told him no for something or gave him a demand. He wakes up in the middle of the night and would have some kind of his problem behaviors now are just like clapping his hands really forcefully. He used to like bite his knuckle or hit his head, but it's like, as a nurse, as a behavior analyst with a PhD, I'm like, why is he doing that? You know, and we got to get that to 0. That's our goal for major problem behaviors. So those are things that we would have in red. Also, he had many years of allergy shots. We would have those in red. We would have doctor's appointments. Or if he needed antibiotics for 5 days, we would have those on. And actually, he's done well with antibiotics. It actually has improved problem behaviors. He developed tics at one point, like vocal tics. And he has a condition called PANS. It's very confusing. And as I'm saying this, it's like, what does this have to do with the listener? But I'm telling you, like the same thing can be told for my friends with cardiac problems. When they had their echogram, when they, had an abnormal EKG, whether they tried Inderal and what the dosage was and why they weaned off because it wasn't working or was causing this side effect. Those are all important things to put on the calendar. And people say, oh, well, I use my calendar in my phone. I don't want this bulky monthly calendar. And I do have a little pocket size monthly calendar as well. But the beauty of the calendar is you can open up the whole month and you can see at a snapshot what is happening, whatever you're tracking. Um, and you can also take this calendar to the doctor's visits so that you can say things are getting better
Right.
or things are getting worse, or it's time to try an additional intervention.
Right. That's so interesting because, like, that having that visual, for example, if you want to track a change, you can actually, on that monthly calendar, just make like a check mark for those days that you've gone through with your desired whatever you want to do. Let's say you want to do 9 minutes of movements every morning, right? Like we've been doing here these days. It's easy to see on a 2-page spread, out of these 30 days in this month, how many days did I actually do what I said I was going to do?
Mhm, mhm,
So it
and
makes sense.
it's really also good for elderly people, like, my father is 86, and my mother passed away in the spring, so he has had to go into the hospital one time, he's had PT, he has constipation at times. We and I have been he has, doctor's appointments, he has, blood work to be done, and so I don't know how older people are supposed to keep track of all this.
Mm.
And so now I can safely say he has some sleep problems. Now he's sleeping well. He's taking melatonin. He is not constipated. He's on a regimen of, so he has his calendar right on his table. And so if he complains about a symptom, I'm like, write it in the calendar, Dad,
Write it
because
down.
we won't be able to figure it out
Right.
if you don't.
That's so interesting. And also, I would add another thing on that note because um, when I help people change their habits around food, I made it vital to write down not what you ate today, but what you're planning on eating tomorrow, right? And then just make sure that you follow the plan. But the beauty of that writing it down structure is that then you can go back and remember, like, but last January I lost a lot of weight. Well, you wrote down what you ate. So go back and check. You have the answers there. What worked for you a few months ago, just go and copy paste because you know what you did back then did give you the results you was wanting, right? So now you can just, because you have it all written down, because it's impossible to remember what you ate a year ago, right? As long as you write it down, you're good.
Yep. And you can also graph data that's in the calendar. So for a while, I mean, we have multiple years, probably 10 years of calendar data on Lucas. And for the first couple of years, he had both aggression towards others and some self-injurious behavior. And we would graph it so that when you are changing an intervention or you start a new medication or start supplements, um, you can actually what we call a phase change line where we can phase change it and see, is this new intervention working?
Right. So how can we know if we're improving if we're not tracking it, right?
Yep.
So I was also thinking in terms of, because a lot of the examples you use, right, either coming through your own life or suddenly getting diagnosed with a severe health condition or just feeling stuck in your career or whatever, like life is overwhelming at times. What would you say are your best go-tos for self-care? Like, how do you manage it all? Like, you have millions of followers around the world. You have demanding work. You have a team of I don't know how many people. Like,
Just a few.
no, but
A pretty small team.
but
Well,
and then you have Lucas's
I have
team,
Lucas's team. Yeah.
and you have an elderly father. So there's a lot going on in your life.
Yep.
Your husband has a very a job with a lot of
Yeah.
responsibilities. Um, So I'm just like thinking, like, what is your best go-to self-care strategies?
Yeah. I am actually a pretty laid back person. Um, so I I'm not a type A person. I, I'm not, everything doesn't have to be perfect at all. So I am a very good delegator. And you know, from early on as a child, I was always like, the system doesn't make sense. let's try to change it. Let's delegate. Let's work together. I think I'm also, I mean, having people in my house, like one of the main therapies for kids with autism, at least back in the 90s, was 40 hours a week of ABA treatment therapy in my home. And so there was a lot of coordination with that, which my nursing management background came in handy. But there's a lot of, you have no privacy. I mean, literally, I think, hundreds of people had the code to get in my house. Constant revolving door, you know. And so I also got good at retaining the good ones,
Mm.
screening people, having people circle back into my life to, you know, like one of Lucas's primary caretakers, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, also cared for my mother-in-law who's been deceased for 11 years. She's known my parents for 17 years, so now she is bringing Lucas over there and
So when you
helping.
find good people, you keep them.
Yes.
You bring them
Yes.
along.
And I'm positive with them. I mean, one of the really big things that I've learned over the years is from a very great author named Glenn Latham, who died on a plane going to speak, going to Australia to speak. He died, I think, in the plane or on the trip. But he gave a lecture in the year 2000 that it was like 1 hour and it completely changed my life. And his big thing was everybody needs 8 positives to every negative. And
8 positives to one
to
negative.
every negative. And in special education back in the 70s and 80s, when he was studying it and had a PhD in special education, he was finding and tracking 50 negatives to every positive for special education students.
Wow.
And so when I give lectures on autism and positive behavior interventions, it's like it just makes sense. Like nobody wants to be around people that are nagging and negative. And if you were even looking at, say, a regular daycare for your typical child, and you go into this classroom A and you hear this, stop that. If you don't share on putting that toy away, I told you, sit crisscross apple. Stop laying, get up. That's negative, 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 negative. You go into the next classroom and it's, I like the way you're sharing, thumbs up. That's so awesome. You guys are great. High fives. You are going to pick the positive place
10 out of 10.
for yourself, for your child. And, you know, so you need to be positive with your team. You need to be positive with Lucas's team. You need to be positive with your spouse because nobody wants to be around negativity.
So that has been a conscious skill that you've developed.
Well, I mean, once I heard that,
Yeah, it makes
and
perfect
then
sense.
then I became a behavior analyst. It just made sense.
Right.
And yeah, I just think it's a great piece of advice. And it's funny because my husband's a physician. I live next door to a physician who I've been friends with forever. And she was having a lot of problems with her team at the hospital. And I said, you need to have more positives. And I said, here, take these 2 clickers. One was a blue clicker, one was a yellow clicker. I want you to put them in your pocket. You're on this weekend. Count the positives and the negatives of your team.
Wow.
And because she was having problems with everybody was disgruntled and complaining and she, after the little experiment, she said, it was all negative. And she's like, I even bought them pizza. They still complained. But, I had another friend who was training for a job, but the woman who was training her was so nasty. And I explained about the A positives to every negative, and she like sat and tallied how many negatives to positives. Like you can do it anywhere. If you are having problems, whether that's at Walmart you're working, or whether that's, your child's having problems, or you're having problems with your spouse or your partner, just start tallying what people are saying, and the positive to negative ratio has to flip.
That's so interesting because I noticed that for myself at some point, how negatively I was speaking towards myself. So I consciously decided to shift that at some point.
Right. And especially if you're not getting positives from other people, but you definitely have to create positive experiences. And like, I went to one of the classrooms because I for 7 years worked in the public school system of Pennsylvania to shift the way care was being given to students with autism. And so I went into this classroom that I wasn't responsible for, just to kind of grade them on how they were doing for the students. And I was with the consultant that was in this classroom, and her big thing, I mean, she didn't even have to tell me. I don't even think she did, but the culture within the classroom, there's so much, like, you could feel the tension
Mm.
between her and the teacher's assistants. So we sat down afterwards, and I said, like, we all know, like, A positive to every negative for the kids, but I really felt a lot of tension with the aides. Like, I didn't say you were barking at them, but that's what she was doing. She was like, "I told you they had to be in math class now. Like, go. Like, they're late. You're late again." It was all this negative, negative. I'm like, "What is going on here?" So I was trying to gently tell her, like, "Hey, you need to be more positive with your team, because
Mm.
this is not good." And she said, "Well, they don't do anything right. I don't know
Mm.
what positives to say." I'm like, "Start with, I like your shirt.
Ah,
It's a beautiful
okay.
day outside." Like, you have to get momentum to be positive.
And it starts with you. That's what
And
you're saying.
clear the slate and be positive. And if you have to tally on a notebook, you know, to give yourself and others positivity, that's what you have to do.
So is this available for everyone? Can everyone become a positive person?
Sure. Sure. I mean, think about situations that make you happy.
Mm.
Like, neither one of us would be in Miami right now if it wasn't a positive experience, right? You wouldn't keep doing things. You wouldn't go to lectures or conferences or exercise if there wasn't positivity going.
Mm.
So the more positive you are, the more positivity you're going to attract. And yeah.
It's kind of a self-fulfilling, not prophecy, but it just re-energizes itself because it more, like you said, more positivity attracts more positivity.
Hmm. Yep.
So for people listening to this, like especially for those who have issues or worried about that their child or maybe their grandchild has any challenges in the learning field, if I can call it like
Mhm.
as diverse as that, where can they find you? Like what would you say is the best resources to find all of the hours and hours of information that you're sharing?
Well, I mean, marybarbera.com is my website. My book, my podcasts are Turn Autism Around. Find me on social media, either at Mary Barbera or Turn Autism Around. The earlier the better. Like, my most recent work is really about finding what we can do to help, like, our smallest learners, our youngest learners. But it's never too late. It's never too early to make changes.
Mm.
And so, yeah, whether you're a parent, an aunt, a grandparent, um, or a teacher, or an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, I have a 4-step approach. I have a free assessment that's online that really, I'm hoping, it has really proved to be a good snapshot of what's going on in terms of all of these areas, because that's the challenge. It's not, a lot of people just think like it's a speech problem.
Mm.
But it's not just a speech problem. It's also understanding the language, it's imitation, matching, um, and it's also leisure skills, play skills. It's also picky eating, sleeping issues, potty training problems, grooming, dressing. You know, people are like, I just want to get my child potty trained, but
Mm.
they can't even pull up and down their pants or wash their hands. So those are also really important
Mm.
skills for everybody to be aware of. Where are they now? And where do you want them to be?
Right.
And just like anything, just get a plan and start moving.
Right. And I'm also thinking what you also offer. I know, like, from being your friend for years and years now, the communities that you've built, right? Because I'm thinking as a parent, it's so easy to feel I'm the only one, or this is my problem, or like I feel isolated with this challenge. So I just think that I just want to highlight that, like the community part of what you're offering. I can just imagine how valuable that must be for parents who might have been struggling with this by themselves for years. Now they can feel like included and meet others who have the same situation as them.
And that is a benefit of everybody being online. And, you know, people are like, I don't like social media. And, you know, I was an early adopter of Facebook because I had au pairs come and live with me to help me care for my kids. And so I was an early adopter of Facebook, but I have met more people online that I never even physically met that, you know, tell me I've changed their lives and, you know, through my books and my videos. And so we really do need to come together, but not to come together and just complain or be, oh, woe is me. No,
No, no.
you can move whether you have, my son is very impaired. He is going to need lifelong care. But that doesn't mean my, you know, my life is now ruined, which is what I thought initially. I thought if he gets a diagnosis of autism, the curtains are going to fall
Mm.
and my life is going to never be the same.
Mm.
It is never this going to be the same. But there's also no such thing as normal. There's no such, you know, I wanted, like, why can't I just have a normal life? There is no such thing as a normal life. I actually drew out this little graph thingy, which I think is also very, very applicable. So the graph is just a bell curve. So it's just a simple graph with a bell curve. And the way the person who showed me this many decades ago is like, you know, down the middle of the bell curve is just the average
And
or
this
the,
applies to everything. It's
yeah,
height,
yeah,
IQ,
yeah,
weight,
IQ.
everything.
So it can be how extroverted or introverted you are. What a picky eater you are. It's like we have Joe average, and then we've got like a standard deviation and two standard deviation, and then off the curve on the high side, off the curve on the low side, whatever we're talking about. And so kids with autism, for instance, and like IQ score of 100, maybe the middle of the road, right? Now we have two standard deviations below it, and that is lower than 70. That is what we used to call mental retardation, now call intellectual disability. My son, Lucas, has autism and an intellectual disability, which is why he can't, you know, that he needs so much supervision. So we have him off the curve on the low side, but we also have kids with very high functioning or very good language who have autism and are also gifted off the other side of the curve, more than two or three standard deviations on the high side. And our goal for any of this, whether you're an extremely picky eater, so picky that you actually need a feeding tube or whatever, it's not to pull them back to Joe normal. It's just to pull them back to the curve where they can function,
Right.
to pull them up enough that, and it really, for kids with autism, it's not about IQ. It's about three things that I want for both of my sons, all of your kids, all of us, is to be as safe as possible, as independent as possible, and as happy as possible.
Mm.
And so those are things that um, we need to prioritize.
Mm.
And so safety for Lucas looks a lot different than safety for my second son, who is 28 and he's a physician, he's a radiology resident. You know, his safety looks different. He can travel by himself. And his happiness looks different and his independence looks different. So it's not about getting a normal life back or getting a normal childhood. It's about helping them with their strengths and their needs, catching your needs up as much as possible to get kids functioning as with as much safety, independence, and happiness as
I
possible.
love that. I think that's a really an empowering thought. Like, we're not looking to make any of us come back to Joe normal,
Yep.
but create the best life possible for each and every one of us.
Yep.
I think this is brilliant, Mary. I really appreciate our friendship, and I really appreciate you for the amazing work you're doing. And I know it's not always easy. It's not. It's a constant challenge, right?
Yeah.
But we are types of people, we don't give up.
You don't give up. Nobody's going to put on my grave. I gave up. I always give it the good college try, and I'm always trying to improve everything about my life.
And what I also can say, we're having fun while doing it.
Yes. Yes.
Important.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.